Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to witness the greatest happening in sport, sudden death podcasting.
It's time to take an inside look at those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have a digital marketer who specializes in brand SERP optimization and knowledge panel management. Oh, we're going to learn what that is on this episode, my listeners. He's the founder and CEO at Kalicube, author, speaker, podcaster, and lifelong entrepreneur. Thrive Loud listeners, the Brand SERP Guy himself, Jason Barnard. Jason, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much, Lou. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Jason is coming to us from across the pond, not in England, although you can hear that accent there, but coming to us from France. And I heard about what you did and looked it up, checked it out, and I still wanted to know more. So can you share with the listeners, I want to rewind a little bit as to how this specifically became your focus in your gig, and then we'll dive more into you being the Brand SERP Guy. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair enough. Do you want the very long story or the slightly shortened version?
The slightly shortened version.
Right, okay. After a degree in economics at Liverpool University, where I played in the Cavern Club where the Beatles played, which doesn't make me a better musician, but it's a really good fun fact. I went to the same university as John Lennon, but 20 years later, and then moved to Paris, joined another band, played for 10 years, touring Europe, playing in a band, playing double bass. Then that fell apart because everybody left the band except me. And when you're on your own on stage, you look a bit of a fool with a double bass. So I created a cartoon series with my now ex-wife called Bouwan Kuala for preschool children. And we launched it online and it was a phenomenal success. We had 5 million visits a month from kids aged under 10 years old and made games, songs and animations for children. Ended up making a TV series as well, which was released in the UK and France, in Poland, in Israel, in South Africa, and in the US. And the reason I then moved into digital marketing was because the website ended up with 5 million visits a month, but 1 million of them came from Google. And when the cartoon series website, it's a long story, but my business partner basically managed to take it away from me. Very upsetting, terribly weepy, horrible story where I can cry for hours about it and moan about how unfair life can be. I had to convert, make some money, and I just said to people, you know, if I can get 1 million people a month to a site for children, think what I can do for your business. And that's how I segued into digital marketing, SEO, optimizing websites for Google for my clients. And from there, this is the crux of the story. I would pitch to clients and I would often not get the client and I couldn't figure out why. And it turns out they looked my name up on Google as soon as I left the room. And what came up was the blue dog. I was a blue dog in a cartoon and it would say, Jason Barnard is a blue dog. And they would immediately think, I'm not going to give my digital marketing strategy over to a blue dog, especially not a cartoon blue dog. And what I then determined to do is say, I'm going to make the digital marketing stuff rank on my own brand SERP. A brand SERP is a search engine results page for a brand or personal brand. In my case, it was the personal brand. So that when these people I was pitching to Googled my name, they saw digital marketer, search engine journal, SEMrush, SE ranking, all these companies that kind of are known in the industry. And the blue dog has a little corner somewhere on the SERP.
You could have made the blue dog the icon or the logo of it, which would have been kind of ironic and cool at the same time. So let's go through this. So what actually happens for those that, you know, recognize there's a lot of SEO work, this SERP optimization that you're doing, can you explain maybe what goes into it so that users can understand, oh, now I understand how they were able to do that?
Well, it occurred to me that I would give my business card to people and they would look at that and they would put it on the desk or in the bin, usually. And what my business card was in fact what people saw when they Googled my name or my company name. So I thought that's what I need to design. So the idea is I need to design what my audience sees when they Google my name or my brand name. And that's the crux of it. And you might think, well, Google decides. And yes, Google does decide, but Google wants to show your audience, the people who are Googling your name or your brand name, the content that is the most relevant, helpful, and valuable to them. And the thing is, it doesn't necessarily know what that is. All you need to do is indicate to Google what you think is most helpful, valuable, and interesting to your audience. And if you are being honest and fair about it, and it's a reasonably honest and balanced view of who you are and what you do to your audience, Google will show it.
There is a little bit of a challenge, right? Because sometimes, whether you have a common name in a business or a common brand name, you're fighting for real estate. How do you work with your clients to help them maybe synthesize through that or get the more specific communication so that people can get to what is most important to them? Right.
Well, the most common problem brands have, if we're talking about companies rather than people, is that they don't actually think about it, because most brand names within a geo region are going to be fairly unique because of company registration, trademark laws, that kind of thing. You will tend to end up with reasonably unique names. If you don't have a unique company name, it becomes a problem. And that requires that you then dominate. And it's a lot of work. And for people, obviously, names are very ambiguous. And that really is a question of making sure that you dominate Google's mind. And if we come back a step again, back to the company idea, think about that. If you are dominating Google's mind, if you are controlling what it understands about you, what you do, and what your audience is looking for, in the widest perspective, you're going to be dominating the general overall SEO strategy on Google, which is always a good thing. So kind of like that idea of saying, look at what Google shows when people search your brand name. Think about what you see, what you expected to see, what you want to see, and work towards that third one. And basically, once you start doing that, you will start to build out from your brand SERP exactly how you want to be perceived by the world. Because what your brand SERP is, the search engine results page for a search on your exact match brand name, is Google's reflection of the world's opinion of you. And if it's reflecting something incredibly positive, accurate, and convincing, you've nailed it, both in Google's mind, but also the World Wide Web in general thinks positively, accurately, and you are convincing to them.
The clients that you go to, obviously, some of them have done some of this work in SEO work to work on their names. Some of them have not. What would you say is the most common status, I guess, or state of where they're at when you start to get engaged with them? Is that they've done nothing, or they're somewhere in between, but it's not really clear?
The most common comment I hear from SEO experts, brand owners, and pretty much everybody when I talk about this is, my site ranks number one, job done. And that's when I get a bit over enthusiastic and start explaining to them that job has barely started.
So, and that's where you're really going to dive into it. I want to have a little fun with you here, Jason. You see my name. Lou Diamond, I have a little bit of a battle because there's another guy named Lou Diamond, obviously Lou Diamond Phillips, who's an actor, who's out there. So we recognized this a long time ago. But that's an interesting challenge, right? Because sometimes product names, people's names, they might overlap. There's something similar there. Let's talk about me specifically to make it more of a good example. How do you tackle someone who's an actor, famous for many years, versus someone else who isn't, and how that distinguishing part comes in?
Right. Well, in fact, you're further back in the queue than you thought you were, because there's another Lou Diamond who has the same name as you, who was a Marine.
Right.
So you have to bear in mind that there's a big kind of ambiguity around a name, especially yours. And yours is actually quite unique, except for the fact you happen to have this actor and there is that confusion. But What is interesting with this is Lou Diamond Phillips and Lou Diamond are not the same thing.
Right.
And what Google is trying to do is understand the world in the way that we humans do. So it would understand that Lou Diamond Phillips is one person and Lou Diamond is another. Now, there are multiple Lou Diamonds, which is the secondary problem. But this first problem is, if Google is sufficiently confident in its understanding of you, it will potentially show you alongside Lou Diamond Phillips, and eventually instead of Lou Diamond Phillips. As you can see with the Marine, he comes up as a people also search for. So Google is, in fact, showing this alternative possibility because Google wants to show its users what's most useful to them. So you have multiple things. One is the level of understanding. Second is the confidence in that understanding. And the third is the probability that the person is searching for you.
Right.
And you need to nail all three to be able to get that brand SERP, the search engine results page for a search on your name, your personal name in your case, to represent you. So in that perspective, you need to make sure that Google has fully understand who you are, what you do, and that you are this person who is not the same as the other Lou Diamond or Lou Diamond Phillips. Once you get that, you need to build its confidence in that understanding. Once you've done that, you need to make sure that it understands that when somebody says Lou Diamond, they mean you and not him. And those first two come back. It's like educating a child. You need to explain simply and clearly. Then you need to get corroborative information and corroborate this information so that the child, that is Google, is confident that the understanding you have given it is in fact correct. Once it gets confident, it will start to shout about you. And this is the analogy I use, is a child, if you tell them a piece of information, they won't go into the playground and shout about it because they're worried they might be wrong and they might look foolish and their friends might tease them. If I say it, the baker says it, the policewoman says it, the headmaster says it, the teacher says it, and then grandma says it, the child is incredibly confident that what I initially told them is in fact true. And they will go to the playground, they will shout at the top of their lungs because they know they're right and they're really proud of themselves. And Google is a little bit similar. If it thinks it's nailed its understanding of you, if it's confident it's nailed that understanding, it will put you all over that SERP.
Interestingly enough, it's when we started out the business and the brand, Thrive Loud became the way we directed a lot of that attention. And when you search that, that's all you see is Thrive Loud, Lou Diamond, and all of that component, which is pretty neat.
And that's an interesting point, is in fact, it's a lot to do with news as well. It's really important to remember that for people's names in particular, the amount of news around you that's being generated relatively recently, that is in the correct ontology, the correct category for you. So if you got news in the sports pages about you, that would just confuse the child. But if you get lots of news about you in the digital marketing space, the podcasting space, that obviously distinguishes you from Lou Diamond Phillips and the Marine. And that really helps Google to get a grip. So you need to stay focused on being present, being visible, being seen, but in the correct places.
Totally. I just noticed something as you were telling that story, and this goes back to some of that initial work that you did for children, teaching. And children, has that been something that's been part of you? I mean, obviously, I'm going to go on a limb here. I bet you probably also taught music at one point or another to somebody. Is that true? Have you always had that connection?
You went out on a limb and you just fell off the tree.
Okay.
Sorry. Well, in fact, I learned to play the double bass because the band that I wanted to play, and they said, do you want to play in the band? And I said, yeah, I'm a singer. And they said, we don't need a singer. I said, well, I can play a bit of guitar. And they said, we don't need a guitar player. I said, what do you need? They said, we need a double bass player. And I couldn't play the double bass. So I bought a double bass, learned to play it, joined the band. And I was always convinced that I wasn't a very good musician. And in fact, now I still play in bands today. And the musicians say, actually, you're much better than you give yourself credit for. So I never taught anybody because I thought I didn't have enough knowledge, enough skill, enough talent or authority to teach. But what you just said is actually really interesting because Buwa and Koala, which is the cartoon we made, Buwa was the blue dog, Koala was the yellow koala for reasons that remain unexplained and would take far too long for me to explain. But Buwa, which was my character, had the role of the older brother explaining to Koala, the younger child, the young friend who was my wife, about the world. And it wasn't that koala was stupid, it was koala didn't understand and hadn't got the experience. And Buwa's role was to explain to koala, show to koala, demonstrate to koala. And now I realize I'm Buwa, Google is koala. And that
that's the aha moment here. It's that you're basically, and the clients. So that's the real question, is they're looking to you not only for the lessons, but I think they are looking to you to figure out innovative ways, new ways, which is what you've been doing anyway. Even when you started this cartoon back when it was this series of how it's been, now the stuff that you're doing, you are a creator of businesses too, podcasts. When people ask, when I go to search you, Jason, what are we most looking for? What are those specific lanes that you want to be in? I think we know one of them, but is there other stuff behind it?
Right. Well, when you search my name, it looks like there's only one Jason Barnard in the entire world. I mean, my red shirt and everything I have to say dominates it. And there is a footballer in South Africa who's quite famous. There's an ice hockey player in Canada. There's a professor in San Francisco. There's a podcaster in the UK. But even in those geo areas, I dominate. And why do I dominate? Not necessarily because people search for me in vast volumes like they might Lou Diamond Phillips, but it's that child in the playground scenario again. The child is so confident about me. It's saying, well, I'm sure about this, so I'll shout about it. And pure confidence will get you a long way in this particular sphere. And that is, as you said, kind of creative, it's something I discovered rather than something I knew. And because nobody else that I know of is focusing on brand SERPs and knowledge panels, which is the thing on the right, which is Google showing the facts, which is really Google shouting about what it knows as a child in a playground. Because nobody else is really looking at that, I'm having to find creative ways to educate Google and to design the Google business card that is your brand SERP.
I love asking guests this question, Jason. Very curious to see where this goes. You've been thriving in your career throughout your life in all these different avenues, which is why you're on Thrive Loud today.
Right.
But we all have days when we're not quite kicking on all cylinders, where we're a little off our game. Jason Barnard, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or what individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
When I'm not thriving on a day-to-day basis today, it tends to be because I don't feel I'm moving forward, and that tends to make me feel frustrated, I think the word is. And what I do is remind myself that you don't do everything immediately, easily, and simply. And I focus. I mean, there were days during the COVID, I had COVID and I was feeling very ill. And what I would do is just set out what I needed to do that day to make sure that everything kept moving forward in the larger picture. And I made sure that I always did those individual things. And in between times, I sat down and didn't do anything and looked out the window and felt sorry for myself. And I think that was a very good lesson for me that I hadn't really had before, because it lasted quite a long time, of saying, I need to make sure that I do the minimum that keeps my machine, my current situation moving forwards, both professionally and personally. So that includes making dinner for the family.
I like it. Let's do the admin part of the show here, Jason. Share with the listeners all the places people can find you. We know what they're going to type in Google to find you, because I'm looking at it right now. But websites, URLs, all that stuff, we will put it in the show notes, but it always gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
Right. Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, if you search my name, Jason Barnard, on Google, you get a whole range of choices. You start at the top and you get my site, and you can see the Blue Dog, you can see the music groups, and you can see digital marketer and my podcast. So that gives you that immediate choice. Underneath that, you've got the Twitter boxes, because I love Twitter. Connect with me on Twitter. I share all my mad experiments. I do experiments on entities in Google's brain, and I experiment on how to educate Google, to the extent of which, here's just a quick story. The Buwa and Koala, Blue Dog and Yellow Koala have families called Daddy Koala, Mummy Koala, Grandpa Koala, and Grandma Koala. And I built in Google's brain the family tree. through
that's cute.
experiments. And that's the kind of thing I'm doing. And I share all that on Twitter, and it's very, very, very fun. Underneath that, you're going to get Search Engine Journal, where I write for Search Engine Journal about SEO. You potentially get SEMrush, where I also write quite a lot. You would get my podcast. You would get videos of me interviewing people or me talking about my specialist, super duper favorite topic. And then on the right-hand side, you get the knowledge panel that will tell you where my website is. It will tell you who my wife is, who my mother is, how old I am, and show you some videos from Buwan Kuala and also some other people that you might be interested in, like Cindy Crum or Bill Slawski's sometimes there. I don't think he's there at the moment. Joost de Valk from Yoast SEO plugin. Basically, and I like describing that, and I've never done it quite like that before. What you see there is Google is giving you an immense choice of, it's giving you two things, an immense variety of information about me and an immense choice of how you might want to interact with me. It's trying to satisfy your intrigue with me as a user, as its user, as best it can, depending on why you were looking for me or how you might want to interact with me.
Spectacular. Jason, permission to go down Fun Street with me here on Thrive Loud.
Absolute permission granted and delivered with immense pleasure, because Fun Street is, well, fun.
So this is interesting because I know the answer to this, and I want you to share with the listeners. Please let the listeners know what you shared with me was your all-time favorite movie.
Some Like It Hot.
And why does that movie connect so much with you?
Because, I mean, when I say it, a lot of people say, oh, Marilyn Monroe. It's got nothing to do with Marilyn Monroe. It's Jack Lemmon. Because Jack Lemmon, dressed as a woman, playing the double bass, he looks so happy. When somebody said to me, do you want to play the double bass? I thought, yeah, I do. Jack Lemmon looks like he's having fun.
That movie's got comic genius all over it. It's actually been brought up a bunch of times and how great it is. And, there's this expression, the movies that age well, like fine wines, and to still be funny, today it's still applicable. And, it doesn't, some movies have, humor ages or it doesn't become funny, but it actually does work pretty well.
No, absolutely. I mean, when you asked me the question, my second answer would have been Spinal Tap, but I think kind of that's a very niche movie. And when you've been in a rock band and you've toured, I mean, I toured for 10 years with a rock band, you meet people like that all the time. And I hate to say this, at times you yourself are like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's less universal.
You just made the production team really happy because we have a lot of fun Spinal Tap openings, which are obviously going to be put into play in this episode.
Well, the big letdown with Spinal Tap is nobody plays the double bass.
Right. Well, I guess, there's only so much you could do. It's still brilliant. Yes. I rewatched it recently, and there's a couple of things that you forget that they say, and it don't even get the humor in there. One of my favorite is, the show's in Boston cancels, but don't worry, Boston's really not a college town, is actually one of my favorites because it's like all it is a college town.
Oh, right. So. You see, I don't get those jokes because I'm from the UK and France. But one extra piece of information is that there's a film called Anvil.
Yes.
And if you if the audience hasn't seen it, it's basically Spinal Tap, but for real.
We will do that. We'll put the link in there too. All right, Jason, here's how we roll on Fun Street. I'm going to do the speed round with you. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that lift you up, make you feel good, motivate you, potentially make you thrive. Not too hard, though. It won't stretch your brain too much. You won't need to type in Google and reprogram it so that all these answers come up this way. You won't have to add it to your profile either. Ready?
Brilliant. No, I'm ready.
Okay. A song of late that you love to listen to that pumps you up.
All About the Bass.
Oh, nice.
The original version.
The original version.
I can't remember her name now. Oh, no. How shameful.
A favorite food that's not a dessert.
Ooh. Arabatia.
Ooh. A favorite dessert.
Ooh, I don't really like desserts much, but if I have to eat if you force me to eat a dessert, it would be chocolate mousse.
An activity you wish you did more of.
Playing music.
An activity you wish you did less of.
Looking at a screen.
if I could snap my fingers, Jason, and you can go anywhere in the world, where are you?
In a bar, playing music with great friends, with 200 people getting into the music and having a bit of a party. And I actually don't care where it is in the world. It really doesn't matter. Jason
Barnard, the Brand SERP Guy. Thanks so much for coming on Thrive Loud today. This was great, educational. And man, a lot of people have some work to do. They're going to have to make some phone calls to you to make sure that they stand out.
Brand SERP, definitely something I think is incredibly important that most people overlook. And thank you for letting me talk about it, because I love talking about it. And as you've seen, if you let me talk about it for 1 minute, I won't shut up for 20.
Truly a pleasure to have you on. To all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.